think Professor Sanal requires no introduction much. Has been a well-known person across academic circles, more so as a good scholar, as an author of papers and good books, as one of the fantastic say teachers, specialization in rural marketing, branding services. Thank you, sir, for accepting this invitation. I would like you to kindly share as to how did your journey to management education began. I would like you to reminiscence. I know that there is only one day left for you to officially be into another zone of your life. You are retiring in the next month. That is only just one day left. But we would like you to please show us how actually you have gone into taking up a management course and then till now what you have done through.
Well, the interesting part of the whole thing is maybe it is an accident, maybe it is something of an option that came up. Because while I was doing my undergrad, I had one of my friends whose brother happened to be studying in IIM Ahmedabad. So when we used to sit and chat, sometimes his brother used to talk to us whenever he was back from a semester break. And in one of those talks, he discussed about the case method of teaching. And he actually sort of maybe used a little bit of the case and talked to us. And that seemed quite interesting and novel. And I thought it was something really worthwhile pursuing. So strictly, it was not the subject as much as the method that interested me. Now, not that I really thought of IIM Ahmedabad, right? But so you see, I mean, that was maybe some casual discussion, and that's it. I forgot about it. But then once I finished my undergrad, then you had to start your journey to your post-graduation. So in Osmania, where I finished my undergrad, so I was not bothered about going outside Hyderabad. Family was in Hyderabad, so I wanted to study also in Hyderabad. So I looked at the options there. So I wrote entrance for physics, mathematics, MBA, geophysics, and all that. And it so happened that I got all these subjects. And in fact, there was one more thing, that geophysics, they also used to give scholarship. So now between these options, so I was wondering which one to choose. But then I still remembered that discussion we had in the friend's house. Then that's where I thought maybe I should pursue this. So it was possibly that trigger of that discussion that led me to management. So it was not so much the subject as the method that influenced my selecting the subject. So if you ask me why I selected management, it seems to be a very difficult answer, because it was not the subject, but the method.
That's pretty interesting, actually. There are very few who would have got flattened on the method rather than the subject, and
True,
then pursued it for their lifetime.
Nah, right. That the point is that even today, you see, which was that year? That year was 1975.
Okay.
That time. And so if you ask me, that's when I joined. And then if you ask me when I thought about that, maybe 74, 73. So to date, if you ask me, that was the biggest learning I have till date. In the sense, not that particular incident, but that particular process. So if you ask me what do I value most, that process is what I value. Maybe I have developed it over a period of time for myself and used it, but so I am not really lost out on that, you see. So I have no regrets, and I should be thankful to that particular incident, which had actually led me through all these years, right? I might have dropped that, and went back to industry for some time, then again came back. So you see, but still I have not lost the benefit that I gained from that decision. So no regrets. See, if you ask me if you want me to abandon management subject, I'll say okay, I'm happy, I don't mind. But if you say, would you want to abandon case method? I will say no, maybe, definitely not.
That's interesting. Can you share as to how and what happened in that 4 to 5 years at IIM Ahmedabad? What kind of research you pursued? And
I think the difficult thing you have put me, difficult situation is, and today the value system in academics is very different. So you might find me, and you could call me if you want the old school, right? So, and I am happy with it because you see, I'm retiring now. If you still call me old school, though you see, even at this age, I don't want somebody to call me old man, but it's okay.
School is okay, not old.
That's fine. See, you can't hide yourself. You see, you have to see the mirror anyway, right? So, but if you still ask me, you said research, really, that's not my priority. Let me be blunt about it, right? It's not that I'm saying it should not be pursued, but where should your priorities be in the field, particularly of management? Now, nobody says that you should not do research. Research should not be part of your as an academic. And in fact, many scholars do say if you are part of the university, it is a responsibility to contribute to generating knowledge and research. I accept that argument. But you put me in a spot when I'm saying, are you not going to accept that responsibility? I do, but you see, I kept saying that the greatest benefit and value I found was in the method of case teaching. And that is, you see, while I did join Osmania for my MBA, I did not really gain so much on the method, right? A little bit maybe on the subject, right? A little bit on the method, but not so much, though I tried my efforts there. But it is when I actually joined Ahmedabad, I really got the full benefit of that particular decision I made in 1975. And that took almost a decade before I got that benefit, because it was in 1985 that I joined Ahmedabad. So that is why. And if you ask me the best part of my Ahmedabad journey, it is the first year of my fellow program, because I had to go through that 1 year program of first year program of PGP, which is requirement for the fellow program there. Now, today, many of the organizations, including I think Ahmedabad and Bangalore, and even here in IIM Kozhikode, for the fellow program, they have diluted the first year. If you still ask me, for me, that was the best takeaway, right? So diluting that first year, I think is a huge loss for a student joining FPM, because all said and done, let's say you admit students from across disciplines, from engineering to maybe any postgraduate in philosophy, psychology, sociology, right? Even science. Now, you ask them to do research, they may be great researchers, they will do great research. But then, if you have to come and teach, what will you teach? You hardly understand anything about management. And you see, if you want to teach, let's say in my area of marketing, right? And I'm going to teach, let's say, one of the basic lessons that we talk of in terms of segmentation, right? And I'm saying I'm going to select this particular segment. There's so many different segments that are. Then I'm going to select this segment, right? Now, is that segment going to be profitable for you? Now, if you can't calculate the profitability of that segment for the company, how do you decide? So I say I'm going to be a great marketing guy, consumer behavior, segments, but I can't decide which segment is going to be profitable, which means you need to have at least a basic understanding of accounting and profits.
Correct.
So that is where I will say that first year becomes very critical, and I really benefited out of that first year. There is, as you are also aware, that there is this course of WAC, written analysis and communication. Now, that is really not written analysis and communication alone. It's actually making you think in a certain manner. See, you have to go through a process of thinking and analysis and expressing. So that one course across that year is a great contributor to developing that thinking ability and analytical ability. So that is my great takeaway. Of course, subsequent to that, we had, of course, your second year, but I'm not going to go too much into the second year because I think the first year definitely has a huge value addition compared to the second year. Then, of course, after the second year, it was 1 year, which I think nowadays it might be missing across institutions, including Ahmedabad. We used to have a comprehensive examination for marketing. That is true everywhere. And then there is also a FPM comprehensive exam. And then, of course, then that is when you really start. See, at that time that we had, of course, in marketing, there was another requirement. We had to write a case and also defend that. So that was an additional requirement. So see, while 2 years was in coursework, we also almost spent 1.5 years in comprehensive. That means, 3.5 years is when we, after that, start our thesis. Now, why take 1.5 years, right? No, you see, in Ahmedabad at that point in time, today I'm not sure, that point in time, if you had to take a comprehensive examination, you had to be really sure about it because you're given 2 chances. You don't clear first time, okay, fair enough, you're given 1 more chance, right? It's almost like in tennis, you see, first serve, okay, next serve gone. So you have to play it very safe, right? But here it's not like tennis, you have to play it safe. Here you have to be it's more risky. So if you want to play it safe, better not lose the first serve, right? So that 1 year we spent, 2 of us were there in the batch. So we clearly decided that we're not going to take any risk. So whatever was possible in the subject area of marketing, we had covered as far as what we thought was possible. And not once, twice, right? So it's almost like, even then we were not at all sure. But still we took the risk after 1 year to approach the area and said, we think we are ready.
Okay.
Right? So that was a great learning, which I take away with me. So much so, the notes that I had prepared in that 1 year, I mean, huge pile that I had. Well, it so happened, I destroyed it only last week. So, you see, because I never had again an opportunity, given the organizational responsibility to go through that again, because I always valued it so much because and when I said 1 year, it's not just this 1 year, right? To show the extent of effort that has gone in. We used to start in the morning and almost end in the night, which used to be close to something like more than 12 hours or so. Maybe sometimes it goes extend up to 14 hours or so, only into putting our effort at understanding papers. When you asked about research, all of these were research papers, right? So reading it, understanding it, making notes, short notes on these things and filing it, going through it again, and then making an abstract of all of these, right? So that's where we spent our 1 year. It's not like, we spent 1 year, some maybe 3 hours a day or 4 hours a day, right? It's almost like 14 hours a day and 1 year. So that's the value that I have. Then if you ask me after that, well, we also did research, the thesis.
Okay. Sir, I think you have been a role model to many, especially to both faculty and students. Is there any role model which you think has inspired you, even if not one or two, who had strong influence on you in those formative years?
Now, you see, there
So if
were.
you take names also is fine, but what could have happened?
Now, you're talking of during that IIM years. Right. Because otherwise, you know, you're opening up the whole
Yeah,
life.
no, so that's what the formative years of your career, right?
Right. So there I had two people who did influence substantially. In fact, let me put it this way, because third I'm not really mentioning, because the ability or the time available to learn from that person was very limited. I'll get to that. But you see, the initial contact was with one of our professors, who I am sure most, at least the older generations know, and I'm sure you know, Aminandan Jain.
Yeah.
AKJ, Aminandan Kumar Jain, right? So he used to teach marketing 1, he was there for marketing 2 also. So he was there for a course on marketing models also. So he was one of the people who really did influence. And that was in terms of the sharpness of thinking and ability to push through arguments when you're doing case analysis. Right. So that was something which was a huge influence on me, and which I think I have really carried across. Now, the other person, so related to this, right? So is we had also one Professor Srinivas Rao, who was part of the corporate
Right.
strategy group, but essentially he was also part of the WAC group who was teaching. So he also helped me understand the way of teaching, right? Now, in addition to that, as the second person I was telling you, was my guide was Professor Ram Narayan. Now, incidentally, Professor Ram Narayan is not from marketing area. He is from organizational behavior. Now, the question can come as to why, how come he was my guide, right? See, I did my thesis in organizational behavior. So therefore, organizational buying, when I said organizational behavior, organizational buying behavior. And that is the reason I had taken his guidance for my research. Now, the huge gain I got was, you see, your case method of teaching, and particularly in marketing and strategy, becomes very valid, was a huge value addition that I had gained. But the other value addition was something to do with research. And that was in the form of case method of research. Right? So that exposure of research using again the case method, it was by default. It's not that I had very systematically planned or have any prejudice on case approach, right? But it so happened that the circumstances conspired so that I stick only to the case approach, right? So even in my research, I had this case method of researching, and that is how I got introduced into case method of research. And that was a totally different ball game, right? Case method of teaching and case method of research are extremely different ways of dealing with things, right? So when somebody says, I know case method, and is it really method of research or method of teaching? And if they are referring to any one, the other one is a totally different thing, right? So that's how I gained in this from the Professor Ram Narayan.
Thank you, sir. Now you have been since after either in industry or in academics, mostly in your academic tenure, and you have worked in more or less 2 or 3 places, including Hyderabad, Jamshedpur, Pilani, and here. Are there any salient things that which you would like to take before you prepare for a course or before you think of going to a class? What are those kind of preparations that which you do, and possibly as a course or at different places you have a lot of experience, so there must be something consistent across all this. So what are those things that which you do generally?
Okay. Now, what I do, I will come to that shortly. But since you did mention that experiences across, So let me put the viewpoint of experiences across, and which possibly could have evolved my way of doing things, right? So starting from Ahmedabad, of course, where I did not teach, but so much as part of my oh, incidentally, my teaching started in 1977. So after my post-graduation, I joined as a lecturer in Department of Business Management, Usmania University. So immediately after that.
Yeah.
Right. So you see, that was in 1977. So I joined in 75, so 77. Now, obviously, it's like, you finish the post-graduation and then you are put directly into, I mean, like, how do you learn to swim? You have to jump into the water. So it was something like that for me. There was no mentoring, nothing. So go teach, right? And I did teach. And interestingly, Usmania University at that time had not only the day program, they also had an evening program, right? So I had to teach in both of that, right? And incidentally, I also had to teach my juniors, because when I was in the second year, they were in the first year, and I had to teach them also, right? So it was not very easy, right? And at that age, maybe something like 21, 22, right? And so I'm teaching someone who was just 1 year younger, and some of them may be older than me also, right? And then they know you very well also, right? So, and then only the lecture method, and possibly a smattering of the case method, which I told you earlier. I had some discussion with someone. I tried using that and all that, but really it is not something which was so easy for me, right? Right? That was really difficult. And just imagine, I had to do the evening program also. And I remember people were much, much older than me. And I remember at least one person who was 50 plus, and I was less than half his age, right? So, and I had really tough time. So all said and done, I thought maybe this is not the right way to do. So then that's where I decided that I will go into industry. So after 6 months, I told my professor that I'm leaving, right? He said, no, why do you want to leave and all that? But then I said, you see, I think right now I'm not prepared, right? I didn't care about what the feedback was, whether it went well. I don't think I had a problem there, but because all said and done, if you can be a little bit articulate and knew your subject, then I don't think it went into so much of trouble. But I still said I was not satisfied, because I genuinely felt that I was not prepared. So I said, I'm leaving, I want to be in the industry. So one of the first things that I did, and which I think is right, and as I advise also, if somebody wants to join academic in management, I think you need to first work in an industry. Because if you are going to teach management, what do you teach? You teach concepts which you don't even understand. See, if you do not, and it's unlike, let us say, let's say you learn botany, zoology, so physics. You go to the lab, you're actually doing it. You do dissection, you have chemistry, you mix chemicals, you find out, right? If you're going to teach management, you say, oh yes, I have read Kotler, it says segmentation is this and positioning is this. Do you understand what you're saying? Can you conceptualize in the sense that what happens in industry? How would therefore things happen? See, the laboratory for business is in the marketplace. So where is that lab? For physics, zoology, everything there is a lab. For business students, well, today of course you have simulation. But simulation, I'm not too sure, is really simulating the actual lab there. So I don't think it's anywhere even near that, but still, at least it's there today. But if you really ask me, you need to have at least 2-3 years minimum work experience. And that's why I took that decision, not really at that time thinking that I'll come back. But I had about 7 years stint, selling for about a year or so, in banking for about 5-6 years. And then that is when I joined the Ahmedabad program. Subsequent to that, I joined XLRI. Now, the reason I brought in this, one was that lecture method, the university approach, then the case method and the WAC approach in Ahmedabad. And, well, see, prejudice, you see, if you ask, I think any Ahmedabad person, they have this prejudice, right? They think Ahmedabad is the best, right or wrong. So I believe in it. So it's not, so you see, I have said it, they think, so I also think, right? So, so you should pardon my thinking on that, right? I can't help it, right? It's what an Ahmedabad is, right? So given that, and some therefore say is arrogance, right? Call it whatever you want, but that's what it is. So you actually have a great respect, you believe in that, faith in that, right? So given that, but there is one disadvantage which I observed when I went to XLRI, right? So if let's say there is a student from Ahmedabad, right? Because he can go and tell his boss that, you see, whatever you are saying is not correct. It is a mistake. And it's stupid. Right? And that's the problem, right? So you think the case method of thinking means your analytical thinking is the end in itself. So from there you move to XLRI, where though there's incidentally, the first management school in India was in XLRI, somewhere started in 47, but basically in terms of labor relation and all that. And then their focus is personal management industrial relations program, in addition to the business management. Business management really picked up, but still that effect of personal management industrial relations had that human touch, had a great influence in business management program also, where I used to really teach, right? So therefore, a student from XLRI will be able to survive in industry, whereas an Ahmedabad student will be finding it difficult to survive in industry. So there is a basic philosophy difference and the culture difference, value difference that gets inculcated for a student and an XLRI student. So you see, I had both these experiences, which therefore I could use to my advantage. From XLRI, I had moved on to Center for Management Development, and which is a very small organization in Trivandrum. Now, this is a consulting and training institution. So I thought it's a very small institution, went there basically to be in Trivandrum for personal reasons. But the amount of gain I got was doing small consulting projects which the institute did gain, mostly state government, public sector, was some great value addition, right? So in addition to working in industry, you also had consulting experience, which had come there, right? And also training experience, which I could again leverage to get when I was Administrative Staff College of India, which at the national level, which incidentally happens to be also formally maybe the first management institute. It started in 1950. The IMs came only in 62. Okay. And ASCII had a tie-up with Henley. So they had a different approach to teaching. So what they call the syndicated method, which is basically to train managers. So in the syndicated method is in some sense nothing but, group discussions and then drawing out lessons from that. So which they used to call syndicated method. So I had now gained an advantage of getting used to the syndicated method. And I think the focus on consulting and training got further consolidated there, right? In the sense, you see, when you are looking at a training program, see, how do you design a training program? Incidentally, now you create into this training program. So this was an experience I had for close to about 10 years, 8 years maybe. And then, of course, I had enough of it, so I said I dropped the whole thing. But it was a real learning in some sense, because when you have a program, right? So this is a very different thing, right? A single program, then there is a group that is immediately assigned for that particular program. So even though there is a program coordinator, like you have here in Kozhikode also, you have a program coordinator, but then you see there is a group. So this group is responsible for delivering that particular program, not just the program coordinator, right? Now, this group then discusses, meets, and then ultimately decides as to how the program is delivered. And that makes a huge difference, right? So the investment in time and effort is what actually results in a great program there. Maybe if you're really looking at therefore things like research, content and all, it might be much lesser, but the delivery again matters there. You see, that's where I keep saying about delivery. So that was the gain that I had. Now, while in ASCII, there were two things that happened. One was I was invited to teach in Ahmedabad, a module in marketing. And that was a real eye-opener because in Ahmedabad, I used to sit on the other side, right? This time I was going to be facing the students, right? And though I had by that time had a reasonable stint in teaching at XLRI and then at ASCII training and all that, right? So there, the great thing which I learned was, and incidentally, one of my teachers, co-teachers, the sense we are having sections. See, this was a first year program. So marketing 2, one module. So this is across some 5-6 sections. So there were other teachers also. So one of the teachers was Professor Abhinandan KG.
Same teacher who taught you.
So then he said, okay, so which is the case you're going to deal with? So one of the cases which I had used or planned to use was the case written by me. So that was also included as part of the module. And in addition to that, I had given another case which I used to teach, in addition to another 3 or 4 cases which was there already among the teaching group. Now, so first time teaching there at Ahmedabad, very interesting. I knew everything about the case. I did my analysis. Oh, incidentally, you all know, see that case method of teaching, right? As a student, let me get this right? As a student, not as a teacher, right? You read the case, analyze the case, and then you are supposed to meet in your own small group and then discuss the case. After that, you go to the class. But then when you go to the class, you are an individual, right? And then you are speaking as an individual student, right? So that is 3 levels of learning. Because you thought you knew everything about that case analysis, you have mastered the analysis individually, then in your small group, and then you go to the class. And that's when you are made to realize that you have not really understood too much of the analysis because there are many points you missed out, right? So this similar approach is what I actually faced when I actually went to the other side also, right? Because I'd done all the analysis and then Professor Jain said, okay, today, this is one day before the class, said, we are going to have a meeting of these 4 professors who are teaching this particular case. So we all met in that Management Development Center. There was one room, so we met there. So we will discuss the case. So we discussed all the cases, including the case I had written, the one I had contributed. And this was something which I was very sure I knew everything. Then that was when again I was made to realize that I really didn't know all the things. Right? So no, the point I'm trying to make is, you see, the greatness of the process lies in the fact that you keep learning at each stage, and that is where learning never stops. And thinking through becomes very important. So one is analytical process, the other is, widening your ideas. So therefore, if you want to deliver, prepare and deliver, it is very important that you again follow like a student. Please, I think we need to remember that while we are teaching also, we still are students. We cannot have a mind block. We should be open to ideas. So if it is possible, we need to do all this analysis and preparation, and then as a group of instructors, we need to meet and discuss. Now, Where do we have the time to invest for that? Yes, I agree. At today's circumstances, maybe it does not allow. But that was really what made a great program in a great institute. If it used to be, and I presume still is, the number one institute, that is because each of those courses, each of those sessions in those courses had a huge investment in time and effort by not just anyone, but almost the best of the minds. So if they used to think that they had not sufficiently prepared and that they need to actually come, sit, discuss one day before the class a case which they had discussed many times before. So that is the commitment and effort if you want to deliver. And that is the point, right? It is the type of effort that goes into it. The process of actually developing that is which is very important. In addition to that, if you look at, yes, you have lesson plan, you have something like, what is the objective of the course, what is the objective of this particular session, and therefore what should be there. If you nowadays you look at, you will have your teaching note, which says automatically everything that you need to have, including the board plan. But all that falls down the drain if you really are not prepared. So much so when you go to the class, every number in the case should be there in your mind, so that anyone from anywhere asking questions should not take you off guard. But even with all that preparation, it's quite possible you could have still missed out on something. Correct. So it is the amount of and way of preparation that becomes critical, and which I believe, if you ask me, is the thing that I would say the most important. And incidentally, in addition to that, I had my stint at BITS Pilani. One was while at ASCII, the IIM Mandawat. The other was in BITS Pilani. Well, you asked me, that was an experience. I had initially dreaded to get into that class. You know what? Ahmedabad was so strict. In some sense, some instructor would say that, and this person is the most respected person in organizational behavior, a great researcher, has written great books, right? So very well respected person, right? In the area of organizational behavior, right? Say the most important motivation is fear, right? Now, this is coming from a researcher in organizational behavior. So the most important motivation is fear, right? And so actually, that's what drove Ahmedabad program, right? Fear that you could be thrown out of the program if you don't perform. And you have relative grading. Now you can say there may be a huge amount of criticism on that, saying, it is not fair, it is unfair, because if everybody does well and everybody puts a lot of effort, still you have the normal curve. Somebody has to fall in the end, right? So is it fair? Well, fair or not, but that's what reality is. And it's actually not true, that because what happens is, you see, while somebody may go to the tail, it's possible there are some courses that person need not fall in the tail. So you see, it's not necessary that you have to be thrown out. But the fear of being thrown out is critically there. And in your first term, after 10 days or so, you will have a quiz on MANAC, right? And then you will find that there are some of the CS who know everything in accounting, suddenly finding that their quiz marks are so low that they get scared and they start reading accounting. And then after about a month or so, you get into this, or maybe 20 days, you have what is called a quiz for MSM. And there we have maybe some IIT toppers really finding out that they really didn't know too much of mathematics and statistics. And incidentally, there may be hardly 1 or 2 persons who may get some B or B minus. And maybe about 20%, 10% get C's. The rest are all D's and F's, right? So I think within about 15, 20 days, see, I'm not saying that it's to be done, right? Yeah. the message is very clear. You better work. And very clear the philosophy is there is nothing called genius. There is only hard work. Yes. Excellence is something everybody appreciates there. And excellence is in hard work. It's not in genius. Being that somebody is ingenious, no. Everybody has the potential. You work. So this gentleman used to say, fear is the motivation. From there, I had gone to BITS Pilani. And there the philosophy is very interesting. Attendance is not required. Right? You want to attend, you can attend. You don't want to attend the class, you don't have to attend the class. If you are not able to write the exam, it's okay. They'll be given another chance. See, let's say you're not prepared, right? The student can say, see, I want a re-exam. And they'll be given a re-exam. See. So here was a system where everything is driven by fear. Here was a system, everything is driven by the student, right? And then after the exam, the student has to be given the entire answer sheet, and the answer sheet is there put on the notice board, and the student will come and say, I want re-evaluation. And I have these doubts, re-evaluation. Instructor has to do it, right? So there you are, and then you have a class size which could range anywhere from 80 to 100. And this was lecture method. You see, I am used to 60 class size, case method, academic support, all that. This lecture method, 100 students, gallery type straight, and you have to deliver. And I know in that institute, many classes, 100, 120, not a single student attending the class. The instructor comes, stands outside the classroom, waits for 5 minutes, and then has to walk back. Why? Because there is no student there. Now imagine that, right? And I joined there at the age, I think close to, and most probably I was around 48, 50, and also, you see, at 50, I had to go to the classroom, and if I have to go and stand in the classroom, and there's not a single student, 80, how would it affect your ego, right? Forget what BITS thinks, I don't care, but how would you think about yourself? So I was really scared. And another added problem was, I was required to teach principles, not of marketing, principles of management. And principles of management, I had to teach who? Undergraduate engineering students who were maybe something like 18, 17, 19, and who need not attend class. So I was really scared. So and I used to go for preparing in my computer center because I didn't have a computer there in BITS at that time. So there were some seniors, in the sense MSc students and all that. So I used to ask them, how is this? How is the program? How do the students? How to actually create interest in them? Why would they take interest in it? So I got all that information, sat, prepared, tried to make a lecture very interesting. First time I'm using lecture method, right? Make it very interesting, and see how you can get the student to involve. At least after about halfway through the course, I had, to great relief, not satisfaction, to my great relief, in a class of 80, I used to have at least about 30, 40 students. So that was some great relief to me, right? So, but that was a great experience, right? So here from one end, if you look at preparing for a case method like in Ahmedabad, to getting the human touch in XLRI, to such an open system in BITS Pilani, and in administrative staff college, corporate training, you see, you have managers who come there, who have a lot of knowledge of what is happening, but hardly any conceptual thinking, and then say, hey, this will not work. I know. Now, you can't say you don't know, right? So you have to deal with that type of student also, a participant if you want to call it, right? So then you have to extract from that particular participant as to what that person's experience was, and that's very important, right? What that person's experience was, and then it is your responsibility to relate now the concept that you had actually in mind to that experience, so that that person sees through it and is able to relate. And then the participant gets the satisfaction that, right, now I see. You see, that's what I was telling you, right? Okay, so so he is also so you are now on par, right? So both of us are learning. At least he is also in agreement with you, right? So you see, that's something which really, now today, if you ask, when I came to Code, see, it was actually a mixture of all of these, right? So when I teach here in Code in 2007, to when I started after my FPM, and I'm not now getting into the 1977 one, but the 1991 one where I joined XLRI, where after some time, I still used to have the hangover from Ahmedabad. See, first class participation was 20%, right? First class, everybody is willing to participate. Second class, the number dwindles down to about 4 or 5. Third class, I mean, with great difficulty, you may have one person willing to participate. Fifth class, there's nobody willing to participate, right? Because everyone is highly prepared, but nobody wants to open their mouth. Thanks to the Ahmedabad system, because if they open their mouth, they'll find that they are really donkeys, right? So now that is required, the amount of preparation that is required by you, so that you make them realize that you have not done much of preparation, right? So from there to 2007 here, I think I would have treated the students not like I did at XLRI in 1991, but I was willing to treat them more a bit like a human student, right? And willing to actually extract a little bit from them, though they are still not really like the managers, and then persuade them, convince them that yes, this is an idea that we need to accept. That possibly is where I think imbibe the philosophy that if you really want to teach someone, you need to understand the student. It's very important to understand the student. So understanding the subject is fine, but that's not really the most important thing. Understanding the student, the thinking of the student is the most critical part, which you ask me, apart from the learning and the amount of effort, investment in time, I think that's the other critical thing, which I think over a period of time I learned, which possibly I may not have gotten in them.
Fantastic, sir. I think I still see it was a pleasure for me to also sit in your class along with you for the rural marketing course. I could observe whatever you are saying. Many times you are saying the same thing, like how students really come, prepare, so and so forth. So don't get perturbed by their preparation at all. Sir, in the last, say, 13 years in IIM Kozhikode, would you like to share any specific moment that which is cherishable for you?
Well, if you ask me, right, in the see, you see, all said and done, if you look at the 13 years is quite a lot of time, and the age period is something like 50 plus. 50 plus to 65 is most critical in life, because that is when many times you get into personal difficulties. Responsibilities start piling up. Parents are already elderly. They need you. Your children are growing. Their requirements are different. So you may still try to understand your student, but may not be able to understand your child, who's no longer a child now. So all these personal difficulties come. So maybe it is around these times when the sad parts are more than the happy parts, which are there earlier. when the child is young, you have, good time. Parents are also very healthy. So all that is there. So this is the time, presumably, I'm not trying to discourage you of the coming years, but that's what it is. Reality is something is there, right? So these are some of the personal things that hit you. But there is one thing which I still, maybe that has reduced maybe now lately, but otherwise, one great thing about the whole thing is that we may be very down, right? Mentally down, everything. And somehow you'll wonder, how do you go to the class? With great difficulty, you would have prepared for the class. But then once you go to the class, there's one thing which I never have been able to understand, something about myself, right? But once you go to the class, nothing else matters. It's just the class. And you're lost. It's something like, you ask me that, I think I haven't seen that movie, but I've heard people comment on it. It's something like, I think, Mera Naam Joker.
When you're on the stage, you are
Right. So it does not matter whether I think your mother or somebody who's dead or lying there, dead, things like that. So you see, you just are performing. And incidentally, what happened in Mera Naam Joker also happened to me.
Oh.
I was teaching an ideal class. You see, this phone mobile which is there, I keep underneath the table, and that table is a glass table. It's in silent mode. And I'm taking the class. I knew my father was sick. And while the class was on, the phone started ringing and I could see it. And it started ringing, it cuts off. And I knew repeatedly 5, 6, 7, 8 calls. And I knew that my father was no more. But
Really sorry.
But I had to take the class. I did not stop. I continued the class. I had a break. That is when I took the phone. I knew and I got confirmation that it was there. Immediately, I made all the arrangements for going to Trivandrum by road, sitting there during the break. After the break, I resumed the class. Finished the rest of the class, an hour and a half. Went back home, started in less than half an hour to Trivandrum. So you see, that's what I meant. So incidentally, I didn't really relate it to Mera Naam Joker, but as I was talking, I suddenly realized that had happened to me also. So that is critical. So all said and done, if you're asking me, you are a professional. Nothing else matters. And I think that is, so you ask me one moment, well, these are the moments. This is what drove me, and I think will continue to drive.
Thank you, sir. That's a high degree of commitment, which probably is very difficult to find and rare also nowadays. With that, I would ask the last question. Are you finding, I know I'm trying to suddenly divert to another question, but are you finding any difference in the way that which management education has seen through since you started from Ahmedabad to here? And what is your message to faculty who will be young, who will join, so on and so forth?
Well, apart from the commitment of people who are there in both sides, from the student side and the faculty side, is because it's change in context, right? Institutional requirements, which I think may not necessarily be the right direction, right? In the sense that today, the rating for an institution would be based partly on research. And therefore, somehow I have to get ratings on research. So therefore, that if it comes at the cost of giving value to the student, I think a huge, failure in meeting a responsibility. Because all said and done, we are here because of the students. Commitment first should be to the students. They are paying the fee, that means they are paying you, and you are not going to deliver to somebody else. Now, I'm not saying don't deliver. Yes, ultimately the research output may feed into the classroom, fine. But at least, can you give 50% of your commitment to those who are actually paying you? That is the critical thing. So both in terms of institutional commitment and faculty commitment, I think that is important. I think that sort of investment in time and effort is critical. Definitely driven by the institution and how it really thinks about it. It can't be any other way. Of course, any additional changes, yes. So therefore, that's why I'm saying changes taking place across commitment in terms of the institution and the faculty. Well, the other side also I mentioned about students, right? In the sense that, students are different today, right? The way they are, let's say 1991 to 2007, very different, right? In 91, you used to have a case which could go up to 50 pages. Still, of course, 25 pages written matter and 20 pages of tables, appendix, figures. So 25 pages. You need to read, analyze, do a thorough discussion and come to the class. Today, you are aware, like me, you give them a 5-page case. Forget analysis may not have been read and not read by even 50% of the class. Well, technology has changed. Smartphone is there. YouTube, internet, movies are there. So you see, things have changed. Information is there all around, right? So while you are teaching, somebody could use the search engine and say, sir, you are wrong. This is information I have, and great. That's fine. And that's where it is important, right? So therefore, we need to be alert to it in terms of how we are going to actually deliver our content, right? So maybe we try to get into the short cases and all that, but making it highly interactive. Some amount of discipline still is required, but to see that those students can be involved, maybe things like simulation may work, but maybe you can reduce the duration of the terms, reduce the duration of the session itself, right? So people may still say, otherwise we will not be able to deliver value. See, attention span at that time used to be 20 minutes. I wonder if it is actually 20 seconds today, right? So you see, you need to take that reality into account, right? So we need to therefore look at our methodology and see how we can change it, right? See, even at that point in time, learning was the focus, not teaching. That means what you're saying is the student needs to be involved. So here, while I can't therefore now propagate case method of teaching, I'm still a huge believer in it. But still, I'm saying that the basic understanding that particular method had of involving the student in learning is still critical in whatever approach we take, right? So as an instructor, we need to take that into account, maybe some exercise, some way of involving, even if it is case. So you see, the amount of effort that goes into it is much higher, and it becomes all the more important that the process is critical, because today you are a loser if you think that you know more, because information is at their fingertips and not at your fingertips. Right. So in some sense they may know more, So if you try to counter the student with more knowledge, no, because they have more knowledge in the sense that that information is there. So focus on the process and see whether they can learn. And this is where maybe instructors need to come together also when you're delivering a session, right? And then that is where working together across subjects, across themes, and getting the student to learn and involve rather than just delivering, I think becomes critical.
It's wonderful, sir. Thanks a lot, sir. I think so nice of you to spend almost like an hour sharing your insights, your journey. Sorry if I have made you to remember something which is not probably so pleasant, at least in the last phase of our discussion. And I've been one of the beneficiaries of your knowledge and wisdom, either as part of being a co-instructor or doing those wonderful 2 conferences we have done, so and so forth. It was tremendous learning from you. Although I am a very small compared to you, I can only wish you the best of your life in the coming few years. I know some of your personal plans, what you are doing, but still on my behalf and my family behalf, we wish you a wonderful life ahead.
Thanks a lot, Sridhar. It was nice talking to you, and I hope we'll keep continuing meeting and keep in touch.
Thank you, sir.